Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Meanwhile, Theresa May has told world leaders at the G7 summit in Sicily that more needs to be done to tackle foreign fighters seeking to return from conflicts in the Middle East. The Prime Minister also called for concerted pressure on technology companies to remove extremist material from the internet. From Sicily, our deputy political editor John Pinar reports.
Stagey affairs, these summits, beautiful settings, big stars, some loving the spotlight. Britain's leader keen to use it. Sometimes it's hard to move, let alone grab attention here or with those watching at home. You can just see Theresa May there behind Donald Trump. But after the outrage in Manchester, she was keen to lead the line against terrorism. Mrs May urged leaders to do more against online extremism, to get web companies to identify and block harmful content, to alert authorities. She wanted action against terrorists stepped up.
The threat of terror is one that all our countries face. And now more than ever, we must strengthen our resolve to overcome this threat together and stand firm against those who want to destroy our precious values and our way of life.
No one imagines there are easy answers to terrorism here at this summit or anywhere else. As party campaigning resumes, the differences are profound. Mrs May won't want to be accused of exploiting this summit for political gain. She will want British voters to judge she's the one best qualified to lead her party and the country. Earlier, the Prime Minister met France's new president. Her message here was her message all day.
The incident shows why it's so important for us to work together in defeating terrorism.
We know this kind of attack, we know how it can hurt.
At the summit working session, agreement to cooperate against extremists was easy to find. Even leaders who don't always get on managed it here. Mrs May suggested more help for countries in conflict zones detaining foreign fighters. The summit statement, pledging countries to do more and to do more together, was duly signed and sealed. Sticking together on an issue like terrorism is a must for leaders at a big summit. And it's not just for show. But dealing with a problem like this takes complex solutions, time and patience to tackle a threat that'll continue long, long after big set occasions like this one have come and gone. John Pinar, BBC News at the G7 in Sicily.
Now, described as the most challenging G7 summit in years, the issues of security, trade and climate change were all on the menu in Sicily. But so too was President Trump, and his presence and reputation put a rather different perspective on the event that usually prides itself on unity and defending the rules-based international order of things. Here's our political editor, Gary Gibbon.
They're all in perfect sync. They're not. One G7 leader's aide said the important thing is we're talking to each other. But these are meant to be allies. Many of the differences are down to him. President Trump flies against G7 past positions on global warming and on trade. And in earlier planning meetings, his own aides couldn't predict what his positions would be on other areas. So the final communiqué could be very thin gruel.
There's no doubt that this will be the most challenging G7 summit in years. It is no secret that leaders who are meeting today sometimes have very different positions on topics such as climate change and trade.
After the Manchester bombing, Theresa May said she'd secured commitments to coordinate a clampdown on internet giants and jihadist websites, plus greater coordination on returning fighters from Syria. Most of the leaders walked together through the hilltop village. President Trump walked alone. Yesterday at NATO in Brussels, he publicly rebuked three of the leaders who followed him here to Sicily for failing to contribute enough to defence.
Thank you to everybody sitting around this table for the support that you have shown to the United Kingdom in the face of this absolutely horrific attack that took place.
Theresa May has just left early to return to deal with the aftermath of the bombing and the general election. Her campaign restarted right here. She said polls showed she could lose her majority, and she attacked Jeremy Corbyn's speech today on Britain's recent military actions.
What's happened today is I have been here at the G7 working with other international leaders to fight terrorism. At the same time, Jeremy Corbyn has said that terror attacks in Britain are our own fault, and he's chosen to do that just a few days after one of the worst terrorist atrocities we have experienced in the United Kingdom. And I want to make one thing very clear to Jeremy Corbyn and to you, and it is that there can never, ever be an excuse for terrorism. There can be no excuse for what happened in Manchester. And I think that this choice that people face at the general election has just become starker.
Theresa May's mind now clearly locked on her faltering campaign. She leaves behind leaders struggling to put together any serious commitments that go beyond counter-terrorism. This is the final leg of what will be a 9-day trip for Donald Trump that started in Saudi Arabia. There he was fated. He managed to sign a multi-billion-dollar arms for investment deal. That's his kind of excursion. Here, by contrast, he's sitting in on a multilateral long-term policy debate. He doesn't like multilateral groups, he's not much into long-term policy discussion, and he doesn't really like debate or challenge. So, the other 6 leaders have to try to steer him close to existing G7 policy, not let him get too far away from that without looking like they're ganging up on him. It's a pretty low bar, but they can't be sure they'll clear it. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, at the G7 summit in Taormina.